Good evening, viewers. You are watching the news on Sansad Television with me, Rashika. Before we take you to the top developments of the day, a look at the headlines this evening. Minimum support price announced for 14 Kharif crops. Union Cabinet increases MSP of paddy by ₹100 per quintal. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh holds bilateral talks with Vietnam counterpart. Both countries signed military logistic support agreement to expand cooperation. RBI hikes repo rate by 0.5% to 4.9%. Inflation estimated at 6.7% in 2023. Russia close to occupying entire Donbas region of Ukraine. Moscow returns the bodies of 210 Ukrainian fighters killed in Mariupol. Mithali Raj announces retirement from international cricket. Made a record 7,805 runs in 232 ODIs in a career spanning 23 years. Let us now take a look at some important news of the day. Jharkhand court sentences Lalu Prasad Yadav to 1.5 months imprisonment in connection with Model Code of Conduct violation case of 2009. Polling concludes for 26 KARBI ANGLONG Autonomous Council constituencies in 2 hill districts of Assam. President Ramnath Kovind to visit Jammu and Himachal Pradesh from June 9 to 11. Government revived the economy after coming to power in 2014, asserts Finance Minister NIRMALA SITHARAMAN. ED files charge sheet under anti-money laundering law in alleged multi-crore chit fund scam in Jharkhand. Maharashtra State Board of Secondary and Higher Secondary Education announces Class 12 results. Mumbai ranked lowest among all 9 divisions with passing percentage of 90.91. World Bank warns of global recession, slashes economic growth forecast for 2022 to 2.9% due to Russia-Ukraine conflict. Supreme Court expresses concern over 1,450 postgraduate medical seats going vacant despite country facing a dearth of medical professionals. Sports Authority of India calls back Indian cycling contingent from Slovenia after female cyclist accuses coach of inappropriate behavior. Indian captain Rahul ruled out of T20 series against South Africa due to injury. The centre has announced the minimum support price for Kharif crops for the year 2022-23. It increased the MSP of paddy by ₹100 per quintal. The Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs, chaired by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, approved MSP in 17 categories of 14 Kharif crops. Union Minister Anurag Thakur said before 2014, only 1 or 2 crops were being purchased. Prime Minister Narendra Modi's government have added other crops to the list. Paddy is the main crop of Kharif season, sowing of which has started. The MSP of common variety of paddy has been increased from ₹1,940 last year to ₹2,040 per quintal. Support price of A-grade variety of paddy has been increased from ₹1,960 to ₹2,060 per quintal. Support price of sesame was increased by ₹523, while moong was hiked by ₹480 a quintal. The MSP on sunflower has been increased by ₹358 per quintal, while the MSP for groundnut has been hiked by ₹300.
17 फसलों के न्यूनतम समर्थन मूल्य यानी कि एमएसपी का अनुमोदन किया गया है और ये इसलिए भी महत्वपूर्ण है कि बुआई के समय अगर किसानों के ये आश्वासन होता है कि क्या दाम मिलने वाला है तो उससे उनका मनोबल भी बढ़ता है और उनको दाम भी बेहतर मिल पाते हैं।
Home, auto and other loan EMIs will rise after Reserve Bank of India on Wednesday raised the key interest rate by 50 basis points at an off-cycle meeting of the Monetary Policy Committee. Governor Shaktikanta Das said, with inflation persistently hovering above the upper tolerance limit of 6%, the RBI's six-member rate-setting panel voted unanimously to raise the lending rate of the repurchase rate by 50 basis points to 4.9%. He said the standing deposit facility and marginal standing facility rates were also raised by 50 basis points. Standing deposit facility rate is now 4.65%, while marginal standing facility rate is at 5.15%. The RBI also revised the inflation projection for financial year 2023 to 6.7% from 5.7% earlier. Das said inflation is likely to remain above 6% in the first 3 quarters of the current fiscal.
The MPC voted unanimously to increase the policy repo rate by 50 basis points to 4.90% with immediate effect. Consequently, the standing deposit facility, that is the SDF rate, stands adjusted to 4.65%, and the marginal standing facility, that is the MSF rate and bank rate, to 5.15%.
And in news from across the nation, Transport Minister Nitin Gadkari on Wednesday congratulated the National Highways Authority of India and Rajpath Infracon Private Limited for entering the Guinness Book of World Records. It completed the construction of 75-kilometer bituminous concrete road in a record time of 105 hours 33 minutes.
I congratulate the entire team of NHAI, consultant and contractor Rajpath Infracom Private Limited from Pune on accomplishing this Guinness World Record.
India and Vietnam have signed joint vision statement on defense partnership towards 2030, which will significantly enhance the scope and scale of existing defense cooperation. Defense Minister Rajnath Singh held bilateral talks with Vietnamese Minister of National Defense Phan Van Gian in Hanoi on Wednesday. Both sides held wide-ranging discussions on effective and practical initiatives to further expand bilateral defense engagements and regional and global issues. A MOU on mutual logistics support was also inked. It is seen as a major step towards simplifying procedures for mutually beneficial logistics support and is the first such major agreement which Vietnam has signed with any country. Rajnath Singh, who arrived in Vietnam on Tuesday on a 3-day visit, also called on the Vietnamese president. Their discussions focused on overall strategic ties between the two countries. The defense minister began his visit by paying respect to late President Ho Chi Minh at the mausoleum in Hanoi. He also visited Tran Qua Pagoda, a revered Buddhist temple that reaffirmed the age-old civilizational and people-to-people linkages between the two countries. For the first time in 93 days, over 5,000 daily cases of COVID-19 were reported on Wednesday. Patients under treatment have gone up to 28,857. The national recovery rate from COVID-19 is 98.72%. Civil aviation regulator DGCA made wearing of masks at airports and in flights mandatory again in view of the rising COVID-19 cases. It said passengers who refuse to comply can be deboarded ahead of takeoff or treated as unruly passengers. The personnel of CISF will be in charge of enforcing masks. Prime Minister Modi will inaugurate the biotech startup exhibition at Pragati Maidan in Delhi on Thursday. The 2-day exhibition is being organized by the Department of Biotechnology and the Technology Research Assistance Council. The theme of the exhibition is Biotech Startup Innovation for Self-Reliant India. BJP announced 9 candidates, including Deputy Chief Minister Keshav Prasad Maurya for the Uttar Pradesh Legislative Council elections. Finance Minister NIRMALA Sitharaman has said NDA government has revived the economy and removed the undergrowth after coming into power in 2014. Addressing the gathering during the Finance Ministry's iconic week celebrations in New Delhi, she said corporate tax was reduced and economy was digitized and formalized by this government.
That we as a government, not just the union government, but even the governments in the state, constantly are leveraging every facility, every potential that exists for bringing in greater investment, for putting in money in the right place so that people's development is kept in mind.
Time for a short break here. On the other side, devastating drought displacing thousands of families in the Horn of Africa and killing vulnerable and weak children.
We are discussing the Citizenship Act 1955.
The law which was made in 1955 and which has been amended from time to time to suit our requirements, to suit our needs, is the basis on which we participate in this country's life.
This 2019 amendment which allowed the migrants from 6 communities to seek Indian citizenship.
This has found solution to a long-standing problem of Indians being persecuted abroad, minorities being persecuted abroad, and they being able to come back home to India to be a citizen.
Watch with us, 75 years, laws that shaped India.
What is India's perspective on global issues? How is India navigating its bilateral and multilateral relations? How do we decode foreign policy? And what is the impact India is having on the world? For an in-depth analysis of international affairs, watch Diplomatic Dispatch with me, Vikas Swaroop, only on Sansad TV.
Welcome back after the break. Time now for all the main developments from the Russia-Ukraine war front. Ukrainian troops holding out in Severodonetsk came under renewed heavy assault on Wednesday from Russian forces, who see the capture of the industrial city as a key to control of the surrounding Luhansk region. In southeastern Ukraine, authorities warned that Russian attacks on agricultural sites, including warehouses, were compounding a global food crisis that has stirred concerns of famine in some developing countries. The World Bank announced that about $2 billion of cash has been disbursed to Ukraine. It said the funds will be used to pay government and social workers' salaries. The additional funding is part of a comprehensive support package from the World Bank worth more than $4 billion. The European Union's embargo on seaborne imports of Russian oil could result in an 18% decline in the country's fuel supply by the end of next year. A US government agency said in a monthly report that liquid petroleum production will fall to 9.3 million barrels per day in the fourth quarter of 2023, down from 11.3 million in the first quarter of this year. Bodies of 210 Ukrainian troops were turned over to the Kyiv by Russia on June 7th, the Ukrainian military stated. Most of the fighters died defending Mariupol from Russian forces at a massive steel plant. Former German Chancellor Angela Merkel defended her approach to Ukraine and Russia during her 16 years as Germany's leader, saying that a much-criticized 2015 peace deal for eastern Ukraine bought Kyiv precious time and she won't apologize for her diplomatic efforts. In her first substantial comments since leaving office 6 months ago, Merkel said there was no excuse for Russia's brutal attack on Ukraine and it was a big mistake on Russian part. Syria's defense ministry released footage of its air force conducting a joint drill with Russia, the first since the country's invasion of Ukraine began more than 3 months ago. The ministry said 2 Russian Su-35 fighter jets and 6 Syrian MiG-23 and MiG-29 aircraft simulated facing hostile warplanes and drones. Syrian pilots dealt with them with cover and support from the Russian warplanes, it said. The US Treasury tightened financial sanctions against Russia, barring investors from purchasing the country's debt on the secondary market. According to a spokeswoman for the Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control, the new guideline allows US companies to hold or sell Russian debt, but not to buy it. Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov held talks on Wednesday in Ankara with Turkish officials on a plan that will allow Ukraine to export its grain through the Black Sea to global markets amid an escalating food crisis.
Ukraine is one of the world's largest exporters of wheat, corn and sunflower oil, but the war and Russian blockade of its ports have halted much of that flow. Many of those ports are now also heavily mined. Turkey is involved in efforts for the establishment of a UN-led mechanism that would create a secure corridor for the shipment of the Ukrainian grain and for Russia to export food and fertilizer. An estimated 22 million tons of grains are sitting in silos in Ukraine. Turkey would facilitate and protect the transport of this grain into the Black Sea, according to Turkish officials. Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov's discussions in the Turkish capital on Wednesday are also expected to focus on Turkey's plans to launch a new cross-border offensive in northern Syria against Syrian Kurdish militia that Ankara considers to be a security threat. Bureau Report, Sansad TV.
Time now for some other global updates. China's Vice Minister of Commerce said the country's trade industry faces uncertainties and pressures caused by slowing global demand and domestic logistic issues. Wang Shouwen, also China's deputy representative of trade talks, made the comments at a news conference with other officials from China's central bank on issues of foreign trade. China's export growth slowed in April as global demand weakened and factory production in Shanghai and other big cities were halted under the ruling Communist Party's dynamic zero-COVID policy. The government is trying to come up with targeted measures to help companies lower operating costs and overcome transport difficulties. And in other news from across the world, at least 20 people died and over 50 injured when a passenger train derailed in eastern Iran on Wednesday. The train collided with an excavator before going to the rails 50 kilometers from the city of Tabas, where it began its journey. Tabas is 550 kilometers southeast of the capital Tehran. Rail authorities said the number of casualties could rise. BRICS nations have vowed to deepen financial cooperation and custom cooperation during a BRICS Heads of Custom Administrations meeting held via video link in Beijing on Tuesday. Custom authorities of BRICS countries have also agreed to enhance intelligence cooperation, capacity building, law enforcement cooperation. Themed promoting high-quality customs partnership among BRICS nations through intelligent cooperation, the meeting conducted in-depth discussion and exchange of views. In a joint statement, senior diplomat officials from the United States, South Korea and Japan have denounced North Korea's recent missile test, calling them serious, unlawful provocations. The comments came after all the three countries held a meeting at the vice ministerial level in Seoul on Wednesday. The tension on the Korean peninsula was one of the many subjects on the agenda. San Francisco voters cast their ballots in California's primary elections on Tuesday, choosing a variety of state and local office holders and weighing the recall of city's controversial district attorney. California voters are choosing candidates for governor, attorney general, U.S. senator, and a variety of local races. Voters fed up with brazen burglaries and auto smash and grabs could oust one of the most progressive prosecutors in the country in a rare recall election that has bitterly divided Democrats. South African analysts say the arrest of Atul and Rajesh Gupta by United Arab Emirates police is a big blow for the former president Jacob Zuma. They say that the Gupta brothers were to be eventually being brought back to South Africa for prosecution. The ZUMA's family would also be faced with similar charges. Dubai police said the arrested brothers wanted over alleged looting state money alongside the former South African president, lived in a sheikhdom for years. Three failed monsoons have left 29.1 million people in Somalia, Ethiopia, Kenya, and need of urgent humanitarian assistance in 2022. At least 1.7 million are children who require emergency nutrition support. Somalia is by far the worst affected country, with around 1.4 million children facing acute malnutrition by the end of 2022. Here's a ground report.
A devastating drought is displacing thousands of families in the Horn of Africa and killing vulnerable and weak children. Many have had to walk long distances to find help in hospitals and camps for the displaced near Somalian capital. Some have even walked up to 19 days to reach the capital, according to the Norwegian Refugee Council. Famine now threatens Somalia's capital too. Admissions at one center more than doubled in May to 122 patients. At least 30 people died this year through April at the center, and 6 others run by the Action Against Hunger. 448 people died at outpatient and inpatient malnutrition treatment centers across Somalia this year through April. But overall death toll from the drought remains elusive. Many people are dying beyond the notice of authorities. As aid workers warn, the data is incomplete and often comes in late. One notable complication in counting deaths is the extremist group Al-Shabaab, whose control over large parts of southern and central Somalia is a barrier to aid. The group's harsh and neglectful response to Somalia's drought-driven famine from 2010-2012 was one factor in the deaths of more than 250,000 people, half of them children. More than 2 lakh people in Somalia face catastrophic hunger and starvation, a drastic increase from the 81,000 forecast in April, according to a joint statement by UN agencies. They noted that a humanitarian response plan for this year was just 18% funded. Somalia isn't alone. In Ethiopia's drought-affected regions, the number of children treated for the most severe malnutrition has jumped 15% since the same period last year, according to UNICEF data. Meanwhile, aid rations have been reduced because of resource shortages. In Kenya, the Doctors Without Borders reported at least 11 deaths in a single country's malnutrition treatment program over a month-long period earlier this year. Bureau Report, Sansad TV.
Time now for all the sporting action. Starting with cricket, former India women's team captain Mithali Raj today announced her retirement from international cricket, having played for 23 years at the highest level. 39-year-old Raj played 12 tests, 232 ODIs and 89 T20s for India. She amazed more than 10,000 runs in international cricket. Mithali released a statement on social media saying, "Thank you for all your love and support over the years. I look forward to my second innings with your blessings and support." KL Rahul has been ruled out of the 5-match T20 international series against South Africa due to an injury. Wicket-keeper batter Rishabh Pant, who was named as Rahul's deputy, will lead the side. It is understood that Ruturaj Gaikwad will open the batting alongside Ishan Kishan in the series opener on Thursday. If India win tomorrow, it would be their 13th consecutive T20 win in a new record in the format. However, the main focus for the home team is to find a strong unit for the upcoming T20 World Cup in October. In chess, Indian maestro Vishwanathan Anand defeated Azerbaijan's Timur Rajabov in the sudden death battle after their regular 7th round match of the Norway chess tournament ended in a draw. Anand remained in the second spot behind world number 1 Magnus Carlsen. The Indian Grandmaster has 13 points after the 7th round, half a point behind Carlsen, who was shocked by Norwegian compatriot Arian Thuri in a sudden death tiebreak. In football, Italy moved to the top of their UEFA Nations League group with a 2-1 win over Hungary. Roberto Mancini's side lead the way in League A, Group 3, thanks to first half goals from Nicolo Barella and Lorenzo Pellegrini in Cesena, which put them a point ahead of second-placed Hungary. In tennis, Alexander Zverev has had a surgery on the torn ligament in his right ankle following his painful exit from the French Open semi-finals. The German world number 3 turned his ankle while trailing eventual champion Rafael Nadal in the last 4 in Paris last week, screaming in pain before retiring from the match. The 25-year-old did not say when he will be back on court, but looks certain to miss Wimbledon, which begins on June 27th. Before we wrap, let's take a look at the headlines once again. Minimum support price announced for 14 Kharif crops. Union Cabinet increases MSP of paddy by ₹100 per quintal. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh holds bilateral talks with Vietnam counterpart. Both countries signed military logistic support agreement to expand cooperation. RBI hikes repo rate by 0.5% to 4.9%. Inflation estimated at 6.7% in 2023. Russia close to occupying entire Donbas region of Ukraine. Moscow returns the bodies of 210 Ukrainian fighters killed in Mariupol. Mithali Raj announces retirement from international cricket. Made a record 7,805 runs in 232 ODIs in a career spanning 23 years. That's all we have time for in this bulletin. Stay tuned to Sansad Television for news updates. Thank you. Good night.